Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out themichaeldukesshow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
The Michael Dukes Show.
I have 2 guns, one for each of you.
Firearms Friday.
As Thomas Jefferson stated, it is the right and duty of the people to be at all times armed.
Say hello to my little friend.
I say that the Second Amendment is in order of importance to the First Amendment. The right to keep and bear arms is the one right that allows rights to exist at all.
The Michael Dukes Show. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Firearms
From my cold, dead hands.
Friday.
Hey, my rifle, where's my gun? It's
Firearms Friday.
Firearms Friday, that one day a week that we get a chance to discuss issues surrounding firearms, guns, the Second Amendment, so much more. It's really my favorite day of the week. I kind of like to think of it as my therapy session. I come in and for 2 hours we get a chance to kvetch and talk about all things related to guns and gun goodness and everything else. Today we're continuing on, busy show today. We're continuing on our discussions about firearms. We just finished up with Dr. John Lott from the Crime Prevention Research Center. Joining us now is our second guest of the day. It is Nikki Goser, who is also over at the Crime Prevention Research Center, and she's the author of a book about stalking. This is kind of her wheelhouse and her forte because, as you know from her latest article, which is up on Fox News right now, the article title is "My Stalker Murdered My Husband, and Here's How You Can Protect Yourself." Bringing us that insight and wisdom is Nikki Goser. Good morning, Nikki. How are you?
Good morning, Michael. Thank you for having me on. I'm doing well.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, especially on short notice, and thanks to Dr. Lott for plugging us in here and getting things together. This month is what? National Stalking Awareness Month, right?
Yes, it's the 19th year, and I'm just trying to help educate people about the very real threat of stalking. This sounds unbelievable to a lot of people, but 1 in 3 women and 1 in 6 men has the potential to be stalked in their lifetime. With those kind of numbers, I think it's a very important topic to cover. And I wanted to discuss my own personal experience and how I think it's best for people to protect themselves and their loved ones, because you certainly won't hear it from the so-called, like you said, women's rights groups and advocacy victim groups, stalking awareness groups.
Right. Well, let's talk about that, because during the break, that was at the top of the hour, I mentioned how I always found it to be disappointing, ironic, but also just extremely amazing and disappointing that most, for example, women's equality movements or women's libs group, whatever you want to call them, that they almost exclusively are not just anti-gun, but in many cases rapidly anti-gun. And I could never figure that out because, for a woman, the greatest equalizer in the world is a firearm, especially if you're worried about being physically or sexually or, attacked by a man. That is the one thing that could get you out of a situation. If you're a 98-pound woman facing a 300-pound gorilla, the only thing that's going to stop you is not your karate or anything else. It is the firearm that you may have that would equalize the situation. But I do want to hear about your story first and foremost, and then we should talk about that, because that seems to be kind of a ridiculous a position for most of these things to take. So tell us a little bit about your own story.
Back in 2009, my husband, Benjamin, was murdered right in front of me by a man who was stalking me. Ben and I ran a mobile karaoke business in the evenings. We both had corporate jobs during the day, so this was just a side job, mostly just a hobby and for fun. But we were running our mobile karaoke business out of a restaurant we had a contract with every Thursday night. And this man, he was a karaoke customer. He had become somewhat of a regular. He would come in to sing. And this happened in Nashville, Tennessee. It's Music City, USA. Anyway, the guy became inappropriate. It got to the point where I had to delete him and block him from my social media. Ben asked him to leave me alone. He had never threatened us, but I think most women would say his messages were creepy.
Right.
Flirtatious.
Inappropriate, right?
Inappropriate, yeah. And, we didn't see him again for like a solid month. I thought, it was taken care of. And he shows up to a venue where we've never seen him before. And it was at that moment I realized, okay, this man is stalking me. And I went to get management and I told them, he's stalking me. I need your help. Can you please get him out of here? And when they went to confront him and they asked him to leave, he pulled a .45 from a shoulder holster under his jacket. And he shot Ben in the head. And then he stood over Ben and continued to fire 6 more rounds into him in front of myself and everyone in the middle of that busy restaurant. Because of Tennessee state law at that time, I had to leave my legal permitted firearm that I normally carried for self-defense locked inside of my vehicle because we were inside of a restaurant that was a gun-free zone. So I followed the law. The man who was stalking me did not have a permit to carry, brought that gun into a gun-free zone illegally. And I'll probably wonder for the rest of my life if I could have prevented that. Of course, I'll never know.
Right.
I was denied a chance. I was stalked and defenseless. And over all these years, I've tried to help educate people about the dangers of gun-free zones and why it's so important for you to be able to protect yourself and your loved ones.
Well, and we've talked about this with John, that the gun-free zone thing is it should be known. You look up gun-free zone in the dictionary, and it should say it's a target-rich environment, because that's the thing. Criminals who've already decided to break the law, who've already decided to break with societal norms and ignore those kind of things, have said, great, that just means more victims. That nobody will have a chance to stop me. Like the Greenville Mall, that was an anomaly, but because that's exactly where they were going. They're going to places where they didn't think people would be armed. And yeah, I could see how that would be something that would just eat you up over the years of what if I had decided to flout that law and take the chances with the police on the other side, but maybe somebody would be alive. And yeah, the whole stalking thing is, especially the statistics are just, 1 in 3 women, 1 in 6 men. That's kind of a scary statistic in the end, and you just don't know if somebody is willing to stalk. And I saw my wife was watching something on Netflix the other day that I think is I Am a Stalker or something is what it was, and it's these stories from prison of these people who were, killed people or hurt people. And they're just like, that's just who I am. And you're like, wow, no wonder I go forth armed, right?
We then referred that
Right.
decision to the oversight
Yeah.
board.
Yeah, and cases like mine are, of course, extremely severe. I'm sure they're not all that severe, but you just don't know, just don't know what you're dealing with. And there is evil out there, and I want people to understand that. However, I don't want people to be paranoid, but I do want them to be prepared.
Right. Well, no, that's the thing. Prepared, ready for anything, right? You prepare for the worst, you hope for the best. That's how life should be in the most case. So you go around the country talking to people, organizations, legislatures, elected officials, and talk to them specifically about stalking, obviously, but also the role of being armed in being able to protect yourself. John just talked about all these organizations that tell people that victims of stalking will change your name and uproot your family and move somewhere else and do all this kind of stuff. But nobody's saying, get armed, get trained, be ready to defend yourself.
Right. And that's why I'm here, because as a victim of a violent crime, I felt like my voice was important. So often we hear from victims who are anti-gun, who believe that guns are evil, and I believe it's important as a victim to stand up and say, you know what, guns are not evil. Guns are used every single day in this country to save innocent lives. And I believe in the basic human right of self-defense. And I believe as a victim, I don't want to see other people be victimized. And I want them to be able to protect themselves. All of these gun control laws, all they really do is impact good law-abiding people. Bad people, those who are evil with evil intent. Look, if someone is willing to murder or rape or, seriously assault people, well, they're already willing to break the law. So why would a gun control law affect them? They're going to do what they want to do anyway.
Right. Well, that's why we call them criminals, right? Because they're already, the definition of a criminal is somebody who's willing to break. Why would one more law affect a criminal? It doesn't. All it does is affect law-abiding, sometimes disproportionately, especially in urban areas and minorities and places where they really need to be able to defend themselves more than somebody who's living in, out in the rural sticks. And it makes them more of a victim than anything else. It's absolutely frustrating. Again, talking about, I'm sure that you would believe that the firearm on your person is a great equalizer. If you're facing somebody who's like me, big and tall and everything else, and I imagine that the women's rights organizations would probably get an earful from you.
Oh, yeah, probably. They haven't really engaged with me, which is probably a good thing, because I'm very outspoken about this. And I think, after all of this happened 13 years ago, I started just doing my own research, basically, to see what the advice was out there. And everything that I was reading from these experts was to basically run and hide. Look, some of the information they give, the options may be needed. You might need to change your name. You might need to move. You might need to change your job. You might need to not follow the same routine. Enter into an address confidentiality program with the Secretary of State. But everything is geared toward the victim of stalking having to completely rearrange and restructure their life. And, there is a part of me that is very stubborn. But I just think it is wrong to only give that type of advice, but to not also give the option of, you've got the basic human right of self-defense. We have a Second Amendment in this country. Right. And you can go get professional firearms training, get situational awareness training, of course, practice, carry a gun legally for self-defense, learn how to use it so that it's justifiable. Make sure you understand the law on justifiable use of force and what is truly self-defense, because you have to be careful. You don't want to end up in prison yourself because you didn't fully understand the law and when you can truly use that gun in self-defense. And I think that's very important advice to give. My whole thing is give all of the options, and then let the person who's being victimized, let them make the decision what will work best for them. But why is this seen as such a taboo subject, Right.
Well, definitely seems out, unequal and unbalanced when they say, give you all this advice, changing your name and your address and your job and all that, which is great. That's probably good information as options, but it feels like now you're living within the own prison of your life, because now you have to constantly do that, and never telling you that there's a way to be positively defensive in being able to have a concealed carry permit, have a firearm, have the training, and be able to defend, to empower you. It sounds like, again, like you said, run and hide. I'm cowering in the corner. I'm a weak little girl. I can't do this. Or a weak little guy. I can't do this. Whereas if you're able to take all those other factors into effect, the changing the name and the routine and everything else, and be able to defend yourself, that empowers you to be able to go out and live your life with less fear. right? Not with no fear, but with less fear.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's terrible what the criminal justice system does to people as well. I could talk to you for a while about how the criminal justice system lets people down. I've been there. So the rest of the story, if for these people that say, "Well, we've got a criminal justice system and law enforcement will protect us." Look, I'm a huge supporter of law enforcement. I have friends that are in law enforcement, but I've had conversations with them, and even law enforcement understands that they cannot be anywhere and everywhere at any time. And quite frankly, the police have absolutely no constitutional duty to protect the individual.
Yeah. Nikki, hold on for just a second. If you don't mind, I'm going to keep you over for just a few more minutes because I do want to hear the rest of the story. And I want to hear about the criminal justice aspect of this. We got a few minutes on the other side that we can keep you with us, so stick around. Folks, we got to go. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Nikki Gozer is our guest. We're going to continue right after this.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Nikki Gozer is our guest here in the break on the Michael Duke Show. I want to get to the aftermath of the story here when we return to the airwaves. What's the reaction been, though, Nikki? What's the reaction been when you go out and you talk to these people or groups or whoever who've only been told the one side of the story, right? Who've only been told the side of run and hide, not the fight part, right? It's run, hide, fight. This is just run and hide. Roll over, wet on yourself, do what you need to do, cower in the corner and don't make a sound so they don't see you kind of thing. When you tell them the fight part of it, what's the reaction? I'm just curious from the individuals and even from the organizations you're talking to.
Well, I have to say, most of the places where I go speak, I often feel like I'm preaching to the choir. I actually would like more of an opportunity to speak to people that may have different views than myself. That's why I write these opinion pieces, and I try to get them out there in different media outlets, because I feel like it's important to reach a broader audience and really try to reach people who otherwise may not hear what I have to say. But mostly people agree with me. Of course, I'm mostly speaking to people that feel the same way that I do, but I have worked on an individual basis with some victims from across the country, and they agree. They don't hear this from these women's rights groups and victim right groups.
Right.
You're not hearing protect yourself. You might want to consider getting training and getting a firearm. I don't know why they don't put it out there as an option. I think it's irresponsible of them to not give that advice. People can decide for themselves what they want to do, but give it as an option along with everything else. And I've heard some people say, well, we don't want to be held responsible because we gave that advice. I'm like, so if a woman changes her name, which is the advice that you gave, and something bad happens to her, well, are you held responsible for that? It makes no sense. You told a woman to move and she still got hurt. Are you responsible for that? No. Give the options, and then they can decide, what will work best.
Right. Well, and I think again from an empowerment standpoint, right? To make you feel safer, to do those things for a mental health aspect, right? Because being I've never been a stalking victim, but I can only put myself in their place and imagine that must be terrifying. It must be scary to have to look over your shoulder and do all these things and not know that you have the ability to defend yourself, versus you're still going around. You still have situational awareness. You're not walking around in a fog. The gun is not a laser shield or a totem that keeps you safe. But at least now you have that feeling of, well, at least I can at least I can defend myself. If the worst thing happens, I can at least have the ability to defend myself.
Yeah, at least you would have a fighting chance.
Right.
But yeah, for anyone that thinks the criminal justice system will protect them, I'm here to tell you, no, it won't.
Yeah.
This man.
Well, don't tell us yet. Don't tell us yet, because we're about to jump the radio, and I want to hear this story, but I don't want to repeat it. Where can folks go to find out about you, about the stuff you're reading? I mean, I'm assuming you're writing stuff up for CPRC. Tell me a little bit about where folks can find you here. We got about a minute before we got to jump back on.
Sure. You can go to our website. It's crimeresearch.org. And my website is stalkedanddefenseless.com. And then my book, Stalked and Defenseless, can be purchased online at Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
And you've written the book, which tells the entire story of it and the aftermath, right?
Yes.
So gives people an idea of what it is to go through that. I agree. Terry in the chat room says that we as women should not have to change our lives because of a crazy criminal. We have the right to protect ourselves. And that's what always smacks me in the face. This idea that you, because you're a victim, have to change everything about your life to protect yourself. No, I'm going to go forth armed and be bold and be myself. And it's on them to not do criminal stuff. That's really what it should be. All right, here we go. We're jumping back into it. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Oh, listen to that. It's time to fight. That's round one. Nikki Gozer is our guest from the Crime Prevention Research Center. She's here to tell us our story. She's got her latest article out on Fox News, which I posted links up into the chat room. And it's called My Stalker Murdered My Husband. Here's how you can protect yourself. And we were just getting to the part in the story where she talked about the actual event leading up to it, why she goes around and talks to different groups and people. But she also wanted to inform us that, law enforcement and the justice system is not always on your side. And it's not always there to really, it doesn't really always help. So we were going to get, as Paul Harvey used to say, Nikki, the rest of the story. So tell us a little bit about, the justice and the law enforcement and the legal system. And what was the outcome of this whole thing?
So he was apprehended at the scene. A United States Marine that just happened to be in the crowd at the restaurant tackled him. He had already put the gun back in his holster and started to walk out, like he was just going to walk out and no one would know that he was the shooter. And that Marine tackled him, and then about 4 or 5 other men jumped on top of him as well. They disarmed him and held him until the police came, which I've been told the police arrived within 3 minutes of the 911 call, which is extremely fast.
Oh, yeah.
However, I can tell you that when it's happening to yourself or your loved one, it seems like an eternity. And of course, he went to trial. It took 3 years to go to trial. And of course, they brought in mental health experts and they tried for the insanity defense. It was a bench trial, no jury, judge only. And despite all of the overwhelming evidence of first-degree premeditated murder, let me tell you, when the police searched his vehicle at the crime scene, they found 2 more guns, ammunition, a baseball bat, binoculars, gloves, rope, and a knife. He wrote a post on his social media the day before, which the news actually discovered, because I'd already deleted him and blocked him. I had no idea. His post said, "Predator versus prey. I know who you are. Run. Where will you work where I can't find you? At home, at dinner, in your sleep, every waking moment." The judge ended up dropping it from first degree premeditated murder to the lesser offense of only second degree. The mental health experts testified they believe he has delusional disorder of the persecutory type and erotomania. The judge, I guess, felt sorry for him and only gave him 23 years in prison at 100% with no parole. However, that was a lie. He has been allowed to earn early release good behavior credits. So he's being released early. Right now, his release date is October 21st, 2028. That will be here before I know it. But
Right.
it gets even worse, Michael. Over these years that he's been in prison, he has been stalking me from prison. He has sent twisted love letters to me for years. I finally got the attention of the feds. They charged him with federal felony stalking, and he just pled guilty to that. And he will only get 1 additional year in a federal prison once his state prison time is completed. So he's going to be getting out in 2029. Even with all of this, he is still getting out.
Jeez. Yeah, I mean, I can see how this. I mean, again, you got a restaurant full of people that witnessed him shoot your husband in the head. That to me would seem that would be a pretty slam dunk deal, regardless of what his mental condition was or anything else. He's obviously a danger to society.
Oh, it was on security video. There were cameras everywhere. It was on film. They played it in the courtroom.
Oh man, I can't imagine. This is just insanity. So horrific. I agree. So horrific. And how happy I am, how brave you are for being able to tell this story. I can't imagine that it's been easy, but to take that pain and to use it to try and prevent something like this happening to somebody else is the ultimate of selflessness, in my opinion, and I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that this was my comment, for example, in the Greenville Mall shooting when the Good Samaritan stood up and stopped the active shooter. Even though it was a gun-free zone, it was a posted thing and everything else. And my whole inclination was, well, better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6, right? I'd rather have to face a jury for illegally bringing a weapon into some place and being able to defend myself and actually being able to be on trial. That would be a plus rather than be shot dead because I was unable to defend myself. And this is that same kind of situation where the ladies who are being stalked, I mean, I personally don't even care if there's a concealed carry law or not. If it was my wife or my daughter or my friend, I would tell them you should carry no matter what, because you would rather have to face the consequences of that instead of having no consequences at all because you're dead or somebody you love is dead, right?
Well, and you also think about it, Michael, all the places that are gun-free zones. Let's say you've got a female friend who's being stalked and she legitimately is very, very concerned. So she's carrying a legal handgun. She's been trained to use it, but she's got to go mail a package or go pick something up at the post office.
Right.
That's against federal law. You can't have a firearm on that property.
Yeah.
So that's where her stalker could get her.
Right.
So she's got to go to her doctor's office or go to the hospital to visit a loved one. Who knows? But they're gun-free zones. That's where he could get her. If he's following her, the gun-free zones leave her vulnerable.
Yeah. I would say that outside of your commentary on the whole stalking thing, that your analysis of the gun-free zone thing is perfectly right. Gary in the chat room says the only gun-free zones are those areas where everyone has to go through metal detectors. All other locations are not gun-free zones, and I will be carrying, he says, because that's exactly right. Because criminals, by their very definition, break the law. And so one more law that says, with a little placard on the wall that says no weapons in here, doesn't slow them. Nobody walked up to the door and said, well, I was going to go in and kill a bunch of people today, but since the placard says I can't go in, nobody ever did that. Nikki, tell folks again where they can find you, where they can find your writings. I know you've done opinion pieces and stuff, and for CPRC, and of course your book. So tell folks where they can find out more about you.
Sure. You can visit our website. It's crimeresearch.org, and my opinion pieces are there. And you can visit my website, stalkedanddefenseless.com. And then my book, Stalked and Defenseless, is available online at Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
Well, Nikki, again, your courage on this is admirable, and I appreciate you, channeling that rage and fear and anguish into something that helps other people. I hope you do get a chance to talk to some people who don't agree. You know, you said a lot of times you're speaking, you're preaching to the choir. I would love for you to get into a room full of people who are anti-gun and explain your situation and explain why it would matter for you to be armed. That would make for some interesting conversations. I'm always about that. So, all right, Nikki Gozer, CPRC, the Crime Prevention Research Center. You can find him at crimeresearch.org. Nikki, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. I appreciate it, especially for sticking longer with us. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. You take care.
Okay, thanks so much for being part of it today. All right, that brings us up to, well, we're coming right up on the break, aren't we? That's pretty good. We got more coming up, and we're going to be talking with our friend